And welcome into the Make the Money and Run Friday Football Show, special edition of the Friday Football Show, December 30th, 2021, a Thursday afternoon for you, 1 o'clock Eastern and 10 o'clock on the West Coast. A little bit late if you missed our earlier show for the Make the Money and Run full podcast. Talked about the NBA and some college basketball. Happy to see the NBA and college basketball kind of swinging through New Year's as we get through this college football and NFL season. He's Charlie O. I'm Vasu Vadaparty. Welcome in. We're here 3 times a week, Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Don't forget our social media selections, 6 o'clock Eastern every day during the week, 3 times on Saturday, twice on Sunday. And these next couple of weeks for the holidays, we'll have some earlier social media selections as well, too. We're sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola. 10 years on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Go down there and check out the NFL Sunday Ticket. And if you're in Silicon Valley, check out the Britannia Arms of Cupertino right there at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262, the original Britannia Arms in Silicon Valley.
I always feel like we had to have a soccer-like song that I can break into.
Maybe we should. We should have the. We should have our.
I mean, I know that's taken, but I feel like we should have a soccer-like song that I can break into for them.
Maybe I don't know. You're the producer.
We appreciate for them. I want to just say we appreciate those guys so much for being behind us.
Super Draft Pro is our new partner as well, too. Download the app anywhere you can. Log in, superdraftpro.com/VParty Sports. New way for daily fantasy sports, new way for wagering, and new way for creating fantasy football leagues as well, too. All right, we come back to the NFL. Big weekend this weekend in the NFL. Let's start out in the AFC West here. How about those Kansas City Chiefs? Remember when they were 2-3? We say that every week. Remember they were 2-3, and then now
no, I don't.
Since then, yeah, I know, I don't either. Now they rip up the Steelers. It may not have been a big deal, but we did have the Steelers on Sunday at 10.5. Thought Pittsburgh come in with a very important game. They came in and looked like dogs on Sunday. No other way to say it. I'm sure the Steelers organization is probably saying that as well too. 36-10. Kansas City rips Pittsburgh. They win the West. The Chargers get beat by Houston. How about that? The Raiders sweep Denver with a win in Vegas. The Chiefs are the number 1 seed going into this weekend. There's no Thursday night football, by the way. The Chargers are in 8th. They've dropped out of the 5th spot, and Vegas is in 9th. So let's take this AFC West here a little bit. We know the Chiefs are going to be the number 1 seed. The division seed. They're not out of the number 1 seed yet or clinch the number 1 seed yet. But what's been the difference, Charles? Here we are, the Kansas City Chiefs. And that game against Pittsburgh, that was over when the first quarter hit 0-0.
Yeah, I was amazed. I thought – I didn't think Pittsburgh was going to win, but I thought they'd put up a fight. And that team has folded its tent. And I've never seen a Mike Tomlin team fold its tent. And I don't know, Ben's quit. And I don't know whether that's caused the rest of the team to quit. I don't know whether Tomlin's quit. I really don't know whether Tomlin's coming back next year now. Right. And I have no inside information on that. But I just feel like the whole organization has gone, okay, we're done. And I've never, ever, ever seen that from Pittsburgh. And it's sad. It is really sad to see what's happened there. I expected them to go in and challenge Kansas City, get Kansas City some competition. And it was, like you said, first quarter, it was over. First of all, I was disgusted because I took Pittsburgh in the points. And the other thing was I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe seeing a Pittsburgh team with no more dignity than they showed out there on the gridiron. So yeah, I don't know. And then Kansas City, Lord, they pulled themselves together.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And through adversity. I mean, they've had running backs going down and, receivers going down and linemen going down. And they've just plugged and played and kept going. And dang, Andy Reid,
Yeah.
They beat him up all the time. And he just, smart, one of the smartest guys in football.
Well, you look smart when you got number 15 under center too. So that doesn't hurt as well too.
Yeah. But, it's still,
No doubt.
Number
Oh,
15 has to
absolutely.
have some direction, so.
All right, the Raiders sweep Denver. The Raiders are 8-7. Denver 7-8. Broncos will go to Los Angeles next week to play the Chargers. They beat the Chargers earlier this year. They would end up putting the Chargers in last place if the Raiders can somehow get a victory at Indianapolis this weekend. We don't know the status of the Colts players yet. Sounds like Carson Wentz is eligible to play because the line shot up from -3 for the Raiders to -7 for the Colts. We'll get to the lines in a second, but where are the Raiders right now at 8-7? That's a huge game against the Colts Saturday morning, West Coast time. The Colts playing well. They started off 1-4. Had Ken Sterling on 2 weeks ago. They're 8-2 since that 1-4 start. Jonathan Taylor has established himself. Obviously, the defense has played great. And then the Raiders, they barely got a win last week against the Broncos. And they've struggled this year, and Derek Carr has struggled this year, but yet here they are at 8-7, fighting out for a playoff spot. As I look at the standings, they are in the 9th spot. I'm sorry, they're in the 10th spot behind the Chargers due to head-to-head behind the Ravens, who are also 8-7. We'll get to the Dolphins in a second, but Raiders, the AFC West, Raiders, Colts, Denver, Chargers this weekend, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that we're even talking about the Raiders in the conversation about the playoffs is amazing. I mean, this team has been through so much adversity this year to even be here and saying, these guys have a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, but they started 5-2. They
Yeah,
played badly since then, and
but
can't blame
but
all of that on the controversy.
but you know what? You lose your head coach, you lose a key receiver, and all of those things coming through.
Right.
I mean, this team should have collapsed. They really should have. They should have just collapsed, and they haven't done that. They could have used, and they could have had all those excuses. They could have said, "Oh yeah, look what happened to us," and they haven't done that. So I think to have them even in the conversation is pretty amazing. Now, yeah, they squeaked by Denver, and all of those things, and they're going to have their work cut out for them. And if Wentz is eligible, that's going to make things tougher. But I don't think he's going to be as strong as he could be coming in. So I think this is going to be a game. I think this is going to be a competitive game. And so this is one that I would be looking at numbers. I'd be looking at health. Is it winnable for the Raiders? I think so. I don't think it would be big numbers. The lean obviously would have to go to the Colts, but could the Raiders sneak through? I think so, and I think they've got a lot of motivation to sneak through.
Raiders can't turn the ball over. Derek Carr has to play smarter football. They got to be able to run the ball. They have to stop the inside run on Jonathan Taylor. That's the big keys for them defensively.
Everybody needs to stop Jonathan Taylor.
Everybody needs to stop Jonathan Taylor, but he runs the Raiders, especially considering they don't stop the ball inside the numbers. That's the biggest problem the Raiders have this year. That and tight ends running right down the middle behind them. All right, we talked about the Colts. So let's move to the AFC South. How about the Titans? They come back and get that win against the 49ers 2 Thursdays ago when they were down 10-0. You and I have not had a chance to talk about that game since then. We know about the 49ers issues. We'll get to the NFC West later. But as far as the Titans go, that win came at a huge time for them because here's Indianapolis red hot. Tennessee has the tiebreaker on Indianapolis. They beat them twice this year. So they've really got a 2-game lead. They're 10-5. The Colts are 9-6. With the tiebreaker, that gives them a 2-game lead. They would have to lose out, and Indianapolis would have to win out so they can finish ahead of them to get a division title. And then there's all sorts of scenarios. Our friend Kent Sterling in Indianapolis was going through them where the possibility of them even getting a number 1 seed, I was like, hold on, Kent. Let's not. Let's back the train. I love you, Kent, but yeah, let's back the train up here a little bit.
We love you, but
yeah. Anyway, so Tennessee, they've got their game this weekend. Again, we'll get to the lines in a second, but Tennessee at 10-5, the Colts at 9-6, and then of course Jacksonville and Houston behind them. But as far as this AFC South goes, Tennessee has a game. They've got the Dolphins, who are red hot right now. They're at home. And then the Colts we just talked about against the Raiders. So let's break down the AFC South with these two teams, Charlie.
Well, Tennessee is, again, a team that could have packed their 10 in when they lose Derrick Henry. Well, we lost our guy, so we'll do the best we can. Well, yeah, they have. they've done really well. Tannehill, by the way, going back to Miami for the first time since he left there. So that'll be interesting there. I think that gives him a little motivation to go back and say, see what you gave away, you know. Uh, so that'll be kind of fun for them. But they've got a lot of motivation there, and they've played really well on both sides of the ball, and they're formidable. I don't think they're going to give up that number one spot in their division, and I think they're going to continue to play well. They play good football. And there's not one thing that they do particularly great. I think
Yeah.
they just play great overall. And
Yeah,
that's all you have
defensively,
to
they
do.
picked up the last few weeks. Defensively, they sure shut the 49ers down from the second quarter on last week. And they've been doing that all year.
Yeah.
Here's the one caveat for Tennessee. Not that they don't have anything to play for already with the division on the line. They have the 2-game lead on the Colts, so one win will get them the division. But here's the caveat. We just talked about Kansas City, 9-1 in their last 10. If they somehow slip up, talking about the Chiefs, and lose a game, and Tennessee can win outright, guess who gets the number one seed overall because of head-to-head? They not only beat them, they beat them up 27-3 early in the year. The Titans did over the Chiefs. They would end up with the number one seed. Kansas City can fall all the way down to 3, I think, 3 or 4, if I did the calculations right. But the Tennessee Titans could end up in a number one seed if Kansas City slips up. They've already won the division, so that's not an issue for the Chiefs. They are 9-1 in their last 10, but boy, they did beat them early in the year, did Tennessee, and they could end up with a number one seed, Charlie. I mean, let's look at that scenario here for a second. I'm looking at the games right now. Kansas City is at Cincinnati. That's not an easy game. Cincinnati looking for their division. We just said Tennessee's got Miami. That's not an easy game the way Miami's been playing either. And then if you go to week 18, the Titans will play. They're at Houston to close out the year, but Houston beat them earlier this year at home, so you can't look at that. Chiefs are at Denver, and we know that's a rivalry. Denver always plays Kansas City tough at home as well, too. So you see a scenario where Tennessee could end up being a 1 seed if Kansas City falters with one of their 2 games?
Well, yeah, because Kansas City's got to go to Cincinnati, and I think that's the tough one because Joe, I'm going to throw for 514 yards. Burrows, come on, really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean that's crazy,
right?
I mean that kid is, I mean,
Well,
unbelievable.
Joe was consistent for this 1 week as opposed to the other weeks where he wasn't consistent.
Well,
But yeah, I know. But no, he was outstanding.
he's
No doubt
coming
about
on.
it.
He's coming on. I mean, is he going to throw for 514 every week? No,
not against that
but,
defense.
But he's coming on, and everybody's looking at him, going, yeah, and he's a leader. Who was it that I heard? Somebody on ESPN radio the other night was talking about one of the things they really like about him is when you hear him talk in the post-game conferences and pressers and in the pre-game conferences, it's not I, it's we as a team, us. And that's the kind of quarterback that leads teams. And I think that's one of the things that he's doing, and at a very young age.
Yeah.
That's helping develop that Cincinnati team around him.
Yeah, but he's been through situations. He was at Ohio State. He transferred to LSU. He won a national championship. He had guys around him that could play. Then he came to Cincinnati, and they had to build up around him. He got injured, came back from that as well too. So it's just one of those things. Hey, you want a scenario as we go to the NFC North here? I'll give you a scenario. They're 9-6. They're in the 3 spot. They have a better conference record than Tennessee at 10-5. They have a better conference record than the Kansas City Chiefs at 11-4. Could both teams lose out? Both teams lose out, and the Bengals could win 2 games and take the number 1 seed?
No. It would be really fun if they could, but no, that's not going to happen.
Considering that every team in that division, as we hit the AFC North now, Suvada Party Charlie O on the Make the Money and Run Friday football show. Special one on Thursday, the 30th, the day before New Year's Eve, the college football semifinals, which we will get to later on. But the NFL right now, huge weekend. Cincinnati Bengals, they were huge over the Ravens last week. We know there was no Lamar Jackson, no Tyrone Huntley, and they had to go with Josh Johnson. But a lot of it was not his fault. That defense gave up 41 points, and their secondary really, and that line went up to 7. A lot of it because Josh Johnson was a quarterback, but it was pretty tenuous for about the first 18 minutes of that game until Cincinnati got it going a little bit. They lead the North by 1. They swept Baltimore this year, so that's a 2-game lead. They look like they've got the division. We already talked about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh lost over the weekend. Cleveland lost on Saturday to Green Bay. They had a chance to win that game. They're 7-8, and the Steelers are 7-1 going into this weekend. The wild card standings, Cleveland has fallen all the way down to 12th. Pittsburgh ahead of them at 7-1 in 11th. It doesn't look good for either one of those teams. But right now, Cincinnati and Baltimore has fallen to 8th, and they've got to have some help for them to get. They've lost to Miami. Baltimore did. They lost to Miami on a Thursday night game, so that head-to-head matchup is in Miami's favor, and they're a game back of Cincinnati with the fact that they've lost the tiebreaker head-to-head, getting swept. So here we are in the AFC North. We just praise Joe Burrow. We praise their running game. We praise the defense, how well they played against the Ravens last week. Where do we see the AFC North here, Charlie?
Wow. What a crazy
what a crazy year it's been. All 4 teams have been in first.
Yeah.
All 4 teams have been in first. All 4 teams have been in last.
It's a little crazy. I don't know.
You think Cincinnati wins out? I mean, Cincinnati has Kansas City this weekend, and I believe they've got an East. I'll bet they've got the Steelers in Week 18. I don't remember them playing twice yet. Oh, they get the Browns. I'm sorry, they get the Browns the following week. So that's a division game for them. The Browns may be out of it by then, but they've got the tiebreaker advantage on the Ravens. The Ravens have the Rams this weekend. We don't know about Lamar Jackson's status. The Ravens have in Week 18, they have the Steelers, who may be done, but Pittsburgh did beat them early in the year. I mean, I'm looking at Cincinnati to possibly win this division.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they will. I really do. I think they will win that division. If Baltimore were healthier, then I would say that might not be the case. But I don't see a scenario where Cincinnati doesn't win that division. I really don't. And I think it's helped. It helps them that they've got Cleveland in that final game. And again, my much maligned Baker Mayfield, and I am so sick. I am so sick of hearing that guy maligned. The guy. I don't know how the guy walks on the field. And
yeah, but he did not have a good game on Saturday against the Packers. They could have won that game.
The guy's being held together with duct tape. Come on.
I agree.
I mean, I just.
But if you're out there, you got to play 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions against the Packers. Had a chance to beat the Packers. Had a chance to help themselves move up in the division. And somehow you got to get them down the field and get a field goal. Get a field goal to win the game, or get that 2-point conversion late in the game. It's just one of those things. Now we had them. I had Cleveland plus 7.5 on Saturday against the Packers, and that touchdown certainly helped. And the 2-point conversion to tie it did not help the Browns, obviously. But 7-8, a little disappointing for all the hype they had coming into the year. And I know Baker Mayfield gets a lot of flack for him and his commercials and everything like that. And yes, he is being held together with duct tape. But that game, you cannot throw 3 interceptions in the first half, and or 2 interceptions in the first half, and lose that game by 2 points based on how you play and how you're running the ball. They were dominating Green Bay on the running game, but then all of a sudden something happened. I don't think they fumbled, but I know that the interceptions came at a bad time. That's for sure.
Well, there was also play calling. You're running the ball really well, and then all of a sudden you stop running the ball.
Right.
So that's not on Mayfield at that point. You're running the ball, then all of a sudden you say, "Well, let's start passing," and then you get intercepted, and you're going, "Wait a minute, weren't you running the ball really well?" Okay, that's not on Baker. That's on the coach.
I get it.
Well, I want them to trade him out of there. I'm so sick of it. I am so sick of it.
I know Justin Fields. So we have Justin Fields.
Trade him somewhere. Get him out of there. I'm so sick of just hearing it. I can't hear it anymore. Trade him to the Lions. To do something. Get him out of there.
I hear the Saints. Here, the Saints can use a quarterback with Alvin Kamara in the backfield.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's throw that out
Poor
there.
Ian Book. Oh, was that ugly? Oh,
Oh, we'll get to that in a second too. But the AFC East right now, Vasivada Party Charlie O on the Friday football show, a special one on Thursday with New Year's Eve coming up tomorrow in the college football semifinals. The AFC East has turned out to be a very interesting division here. Remember a few Mondays ago when Mac Jones only threw 3 passes and they won 14-11 in a windy Buffalo game? That was about a month ago on a Monday night. Well, Buffalo gave them a little bit of their own medicine. The Patriots have not played well at home. In fact, they've only lost one game on the road this year, and they end up they're 3-5 at home. They get beat by Buffalo at home. Do the Patriots? They're both 9-6 now. As I look at the standings, Buffalo in first place, tied with the Patriots. The division record: Buffalo 4-1, and then New England 3-2. So that could end up even. The conference games would be New England 6-1. I'm sorry, 7-3 for New England, 6-5 for Buffalo. And I believe, let's see, 10, 11. Buffalo has one conference game left, and New England has two conference games left. So they may be able to overtake if it comes down to conference records, they may be able to overtake the division. The Patriots have the Jaguars this weekend. The Bills have the Falcons this weekend. And then the following week, the Bills have the Jets, and the Patriots have, where are the Patriots? They are at Miami, who beat them earlier this year on the first weekend of the year. And Miami, speaking of Miami, speaking of the AFC East, we're right there with them. And let's talk about Buffalo and New England in that game for a second, Charlie.
well, yeah. Okay, come on in. We're going to slap you around.
Yeah. Josh
Here's the
Allen
thing.
looked awfully good last week. That's surprising.
Yeah, they did.
Our
But
intern Nick had Buffalo +1 when everybody thought after watching the Monday night game that New England was going to be able to run all over him, and good for him to have that. But I had New England -1. I thought at home after the way they played that they could run the ball in Buffalo. Buffalo had been okay going into from their 7-2 start to where they are at 9-6 now. But they lead the division. They split the season series. They do have one of the tiebreakers right now. I'm not actually. I take that back. I think I just said they don't have the tiebreaker. They have they do. They have the division record. They're 4-1 in the division, so they could end up losing if it goes all the way down to conference records. Again, Google those NFL tiebreakers if you want to fall asleep at night because there's a lot of them to digest by. But anyway,
put you right to sleep, baby.
yeah,
You know what? I'm not surprised about what happened with Buffalo because this is kind of who they've been all season long. They come along and they look like world beaters, and then all of a sudden you go, who was that team with the buffalo on the side of their helmet? I mean, seriously, has that not who they've been? I mean, they come out and you go, okay, that's the Buffalo Bills team that we expected to see. And then all of a sudden they come out on the field and you go, who was that college team?
yeah,
I mean, they've been so inconsistent. And I know that's funny to say with a 9-6 record, but we thought they would be far better than that. I mean, they were a preseason pick to go to the Super Bowl.
yeah. They were going to upend the Kansas City Chiefs.
And I mean, right now, I mean, if they had to go head to head with Kansas City for the AFC Championship, who would you put your money on?
Right now, Kansas City, absolutely 9-1 their
Yeah.
last 10. Top 5 defense, absolutely.
So, it's there. I mean, New England, they have lost, they've lost a couple in a row now, but I mean, they're amazing. 9-6. But the one thing that I can't understand about this team, and this has just been true in so many cases this year, 6-1 on the road and 3-5 at home.
Right. Yeah.
How is that possible? Gillette Stadium has always been a real home field advantage for the Patriots, and it's not there. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm sure Belichick is walking the floors at night trying to figure that out. I mean, really. And by the way, I just want to show you, I have my Bill short sleeve.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Got your hoodie on too. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. So, but seriously, I mean, but I think that's a product of them being a team with a young quarterback and still trying to put everything together. But being at 9-6, they've earned a spot in the playoffs. Are they going to go deep? I don't know. Probably not. But if you're a Bills fan, I mean, if you're a Patriots fan, you ought to be dancing in the streets naked. I mean, you're in the second year after you lost your Hall of Fame quarterback, and you're fighting for a division
Right.
championship. I mean, you shouldn't be here, and you are. So grab a bottle of Irish whiskey, go out and dance in the streets naked because you fall in the snow, roll around, because you should be that happy.
Only one team in the AFC has made the playoffs officially, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. 5 in the NFC. We'll get to the NFC in a second. Let's get to one more AFC East team as we talk about this. By the way, Buffalo owns the 4th seed overall. They're 9-6. They fall behind Cincinnati at 9-6 in the one game back of Tennessee for the number 2 spot. I don't think they'll catch Kansas City, although they did beat Kansas City early in the year as well too. But they're pretty much locked into that 4 spot right now unless they falter these next 2 weeks. All right, speaking of red hot teams, the Miami Dolphins won their opening week game at New England. They were 1-0. Everything was all good. They proceeded to lose 7 straight and to go 1-7. They were totally out of it. And they end up, after Monday night's game against the Saints, where they won 20-3, to get their 7th straight win. They are now 8-7. They're the first NFL team to lose 7 straight in a year, and the first NFL team to lose 7 straight and win 7 straight in the same season. There's only 17 games in the season. That's 14 games that you've lost 7 in a row and won 7 in a row. Talk about mind-blowing. Watching that defense come together has been great. I mean, they look great against the Saints. I don't even think if Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston or Trevor Siemian was the quarterback for maybe even Drew Brees for that defense. The way they've been playing less,
too far, but
maybe they might have won the game though, because look at it. If Drew Brees was there, they wouldn't have been a 3-point favorite. I'll give you that part of it. I'll give you that part of it.
Okay.
But the way that defense has played the last 7 weeks, and they've beaten some pretty good teams. They've also beaten some very bad teams. But still, to win 7 in a row in the NFL after losing 7 in a row in the NFL is a very hard thing to do, considering the NFL is so much parity and there's so much equal play amongst the teams up and down. They are 8-7. They control their own destiny. They're in the 7th spot. The only team that has the advantage over them is the Raiders, if you look at head-to-head, because the Raiders beat them early in the year. And that's the only team that has the advantage, and the Raiders are in 10th. They have the advantage over Baltimore. They have the advantage over the Chargers. And then they lose the advantage to the Raiders. They played New England again at the end of the year. If they sweep that series and they end up at 10-7, and New England ends up at 10-7, all of a sudden New England drops to 7 and Miami drops to. This team was 1-7, Charlie. 1-0, and then 1-7, and then 8-7. And then you're telling me they're going to end up behind the Colts, who started 1-4 and been 8-2 in their last 10 as well too. What gives?
An amazing story. I mean, nobody would have picked this. One of the guys I work with is a total Dolphins fan. He has family out of Miami and became a Dolphins fan when he was a kid. And he was so excited about Monday night. I flipped shifts with him so he could go home and just watch the game and enjoy. But 7 in a row. I mean, after losing 7 in a row, that doesn't happen by accident.
No.
That's just dumb luck.
Brian Flores should be Coach of the Year nominee. Absolutely. Turning that team around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. Now they've got a rough ending. I mean, you got Tennessee and you got New England, so you're going to have to play great football. But they've got Tennessee at home, so that helps them. Is that New England game on the road, or is that at home?
Because the game's at home because they won the first game of the year at New England.
Okay, so now, ironically, that becomes a problem for them because New England plays so well on the road.
Right.
So that,
remember, Tennessee is playing for huge marbles too this weekend.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That they've got 2 really rough games to finish up the season with, so they're going to have to be at their best. So from a wagering standpoint, that's they may not be the best bet.
There's that number again, 3.5. What do you do with that 3.5 number? We saw that number all year in the NFL, especially that way. And Just
Hate that hook. Hate
hit that
that
hook.
hook.
Yeah, especially a field goal plus the hook. It's very interesting. So where do we see? Okay, so where do we see? Now the Saints are 7-8. We'll get to the NFC part of it in a second, but the Dolphins at 8-7. I mean, they could win these two games and end up being in the fifth seed. End up being in the sixth seed. They're not going to get to the fifth seed. I don't think the Colts might have that locked up with one more win, but they're formidable. I mean, defense travels. This is the playoffs. When the playoffs roll around, if they're in the playoffs and they may not have the offense, but boy, that defense can shut some teams down like they did over the last 7 weeks, and they can end up surprising a few people, maybe even the first round. If they were in the playoffs right now, they'd be in the 7th spot. They would play the Tennessee Titans. So I guess this would be a good matchup to see how they match up against Tennessee. The number 2 seed would be Tennessee if it ended today. So this could be a preview of a
Preview.
first round matchup in 2 weeks.
How fun would that be?
Or in 3 weeks, I should say. Yeah, exactly. Very interesting to see how the Dolphins are, but they're 8-7. Big turnaround for them. All right, let's hit the early games real quick before we get to the NFC. We'll take a break after we hit the early games here. Indianapolis, the line jumped from -3 for the Raiders to -7, 44.5 the total. Bears and Giants. Tampa Bay at the Jets. Buffalo 14.5 versus Atlanta. They need that for the division. Philadelphia 3 at Washington. We'll get to the NFC in a second. Kansas City 5-51 at Cincinnati. Could be a lot of points scored there, or Kansas City's defense comes through, because I don't know if Cincinnati's defense can stop Kansas City right now. We talked about the Patriots. Got Jacksonville, 16-point favorites. I don't know if I'd lay 16 points on that. Jacksonville has played better since the Urban Meyer deal. Tennessee, we talked about 3.5, 39.5, hosting Miami. And then the Rams, Baltimore needs this game. We don't know what the status is of Lamar Jackson or even Huntley for that matter. 3.5 on the road, 46.5. The Rams have played well, but Baltimore needs this game. Let's stick to the AFC side of this ledger here, Charlie.
The Rams and Ravens, that's going to be an interesting situation. The Rams want to keep winning because they'd like to keep home field advantage if they could get it. So I think that's important to them. And again, I think that game really depends on where Lamar is, if he's available. But they need a win. They need a win real bad. Being at home, I think that helps them. West Coast team going east, having to play early, all those factors come into play there. So from a wagering standpoint, you've got to look at that. Jets, Buccaneers. Okay, never mind. But that Pats Jaguars game, you talked about that, man. That's a ton of points.
That's a ton of points. They don't have a great offense. Their defense is really good. They are at home. Jacksonville, I think Trevor Lawrence next year, we're going to see a big jump from Trevor Lawrence this year to next year, but it may not happen this year. Buffalo-Atlanta game is very interesting to me because Buffalo trying to hold off New England for that division. Atlanta, they've had their moments this year. That 2 touchdowns in the hook for the Buffalo Bills seems a lot. They barely got by Carolina 2 weeks ago with that -14 spread as well too. So
and I'm going to add this in. They've had 2 good games.
Right.
So it's time for them to trip. Okay. I mean, I'm just going to say, look at what they've done. They tend to do a couple of good games and then trip. So when I look at that, and I'm not saying the Falcons are going to win, but I look at 14 on the hook.
Yeah. That's
going,
a lot.
I'm just going, that may be an underdog game right there.
Yeah. Big game in Indianapolis. As we said, the Colts are 7 over the Raiders. Carson Wentz looks like he's going to be healthy. They've got Jonathan Taylor. Their defense has been outstanding. Derek Carr has turned the ball over, especially on the road. They were lucky to win that game against Denver last week, really, frankly. The way the defense played, the Raiders' defense actually stepped up last week and stopped. I knew it was Drew Lock, and I know Denver doesn't have a great offense, but still, the way the Raiders have played and the way they've turned the ball over the last few weeks, it's been a little rough. All right, the afternoon games before we take a break here. 49ers 13-44 versus Houston. I would think no matter who the quarterback is, they're going to have to win that game against Houston. They should win that game against Houston. 13 is a lot as well, too. 44 the total there. Big game in Dallas. Dallas 6-51.5 versus the slumping, big time slumping Arizona Cardinals. 6-51.5. Dallas possibly a number 1 seed, Charlie.
And I got to tell you something. We've talked about Kingsbury and the the second half collapse with him,
Yeah.
the Cardinals. I saw something today. He had that same scenario at Texas Tech. I didn't know that.
Right.
His teams would win big in the first half and then collapse second half. So this is something that didn't just develop in the NFL. This has been a scenario for him as a head coach. I don't know what it's about,
No.
but this is something that's followed him both at the college level and in the NFL.
The top 5 have made the playoffs in the NFC. Green Bay, Dallas, the Rams, and Tampa Bay have all won their division. Actually, the Rams haven't won their division yet. 3 of the 4 have. Arizona, a game back of the Rams, who are at Baltimore. We said that already earlier. New Orleans on life support, 6.5 and 38, hosting Carolina. That should be somewhat in favor of New Orleans. That would put them back at 8-8, and potentially with a shot at everything. The 49ers play, Philadelphia plays. Minnesota's at 7-8, Atlanta 7-8, New Orleans 7-8, but they fall behind Atlanta and Minnesota in terms of tiebreakers. So that's the 8-10 scenario there. Let's see here. Seattle, Detroit. We saw Seattle lose to the Bears last week. That was a tough one. We had -7 on Seattle, and they end up losing the Bears outright with Nick Foles, who maybe should have been the starting quarterback all year, but they went with Andy Dalton instead all year. And then Sunday night, Green Bay trying to clinch the number 1 seed. If they win, I believe that they will clinch the number 1 seed with a 13-3 record. They'll be, I guess, if Dallas has a shot at catching the number 1 seed. Yes. They have a better conference record, 9-1 in the conference record for Dallas. Green Bay 8-2 in their conference record. But right now they're in the number 1 seed, 12-3. The Minnesota Vikings playing for their playoff lives, 7-point underdog. Remember, Minnesota beat Green Bay earlier in the year by 1 point. One of the 3 losses Green Bay has. And then Monday night, Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Pretty much a huge game for both those AFC North teams, although we probably think it's Cincinnati and Baltimore if Baltimore is going to make it in the AFC North. Talk about the afternoon games here, Charlie.
Well, first of all, that you talked about that 49ers Houston game. First, don't take the 49ers in that game. That point spread is crazy. You've got Jimmy Garoppolo, who has, by the way, did you know you had a UCL on your thumb?
You do, yeah.
I had no idea. You could have Tommy
John.
Nerve,
right? You have a thumb in your nerve. Or you have a nerve in your thumb.
And so anyway, they say he's going to try to play.
Or maybe, not to interrupt, or maybe the conspiracy theories are coming out and the 49ers are making it up for Garoppolo because they made up a UCL and nobody's going to check it.
Yeah, well, okay. That's a bit much.
Well, I've heard a lot. We live in the Bay Area. I've heard about 3,000 conspiracy theories already.
We're in the Bay Area and we live on conspiracy theories. But Theranos is going to be able to take your blood test with a drop of blood. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on that. Sure. Anyway, if Trey Lance has to start, that'll be an interesting scenario. But the thing that has me worried is that Houston they won big last week. Now I know it was at home, but they won big last week over the Chargers.
Right.
So they're gonna come marching in going, hey, we aren't as bad as everybody thinks we are. So they're going to come in pumped up. I'm not saying they're going to win, right, but they're going to come in pumped up. And if they come in and it's not Garoppolo on the other side in particular, they're going to say, now we really got a chance. If it is Garoppolo, they're going to say, we can hurt him. Now, I know we're not supposed to say that out loud, but that's what they're going to say.
Right.
And they're going to say, we can hurt him and we've got a chance. So that's going to be an interesting game because I think Houston's going to be more pumped up and ready to play. So I think that point spread is horrendous. I really do.
Well, the Chargers were 11.5. The Chargers were 11.5 for 12 on the road at Houston, and they jumped up and bit them. We knew the Chargers have been inconsistent all year, but that'll be interesting. The Green Bay Minnesota game to me will be pretty interesting because Green Bay trying to secure a 1 seed with everything that's gone on with them. That Dallas Arizona game, boy, it sure looks like it's going to be the best game of the weekend.
Oh yeah,
I think
that'll be a really good
depending
game.
on what Arizona team shows up, the 10-5 team or the 9-1 team that was at the beginning of the year, because they've really struggled. That loss to Detroit kind of opened up some of their shortcomings that they had on the road. And this is a road game, and you would have never thought that Arizona would get 6 points this year the way they were playing early in the year, but that Dallas defense certainly picked it up a little bit.
I'll t- I'll tell you, Dallas looked unbelievable Sunday night.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on my. I know that I kept hearing these thuds on Sunday night, and it was NBC executives jumping out the window, going,
Yeah,
"How did
exactly.
we get this game?"
No doubt about it. All right. When we come back in 30 seconds, we'll hit the NFC playoff picture. We'll get to all the divisions, and then we'll hit the college football playoff, the semifinal games tomorrow. Cincinnati, Alabama. We have the lines for you. Georgia, Michigan, late night in the Orange Bowl. The Cotton Bowl first, the Orange Bowl second. The two winners will play in the college football championship on January 10th, a week from Monday. But when we come back in 30 seconds, we'll look at the NFC picture as far as the playoffs go. Vasi Vada Party, Charlie O with you, sponsored by Andy Arms and Cupertino. We'll see you in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast, the Friday football show special edition on Thursday, December 30th. Tomorrow, the college football semifinals. Tomorrow, New Year's Eve. Games will start right at the time our normal show time would be. So we're going to do our Friday football show and let everybody get to college football tomorrow. Obviously, with the bowl games going on, we haven't talked a lot about the bowl games. A lot of them hasn't had, other than the fact that they've been entertaining for the most part. I'd say most of the bowl games were pretty entertaining. But tomorrow's a big day for that, and we'll get to Alabama, Cincinnati, Georgia, Michigan in a second. But right now we're breaking down the NFC playoff picture. Talked about Dallas. They've got Arizona tomorrow. They thumped Washington. They moved into the 2 seed. They're ahead of the Rams and the Bucks. The Rams have the tiebreaker over the Bucks, so that moved the Bucks all the way down to 4. They clinched the division. At 11-4. I'm sorry, not 1-4, 11-4. Eagles with the huge win over the Giants are 8-7. They are in the playoff hunt as well, too. They're in the 7th spot. Behind San Francisco, tied at 8-7. San Francisco beat them early in the year. And then, of course, Washington, we had them 4 wins in a row. And then all of a sudden, they look like they're the early part of the Washington football team. And then, of course, the Giants, Daniel Jones out for the year. But let's talk about the Cowboys. We talked about the Cowboys already. We know what they've got coming up. They've got Arizona. I believe they have the Giants coming up the following weekend. They have the Eagles. They'll be at Philadelphia, so that could be a huge game.
Well, it's at Philly,
right? It won't make it's at Philly, but it won't have any impact for the division. But it'll certainly have an impact depending on what Philadelphia does this weekend. Philadelphia is at the New York Giants this weekend. They're a 3-point favorite. I'm sorry, they're at Washington this weekend. They're a 3-point favorite, and we just talked about how Washington has struggled. So let's we already hit Dallas, so let's hit Philadelphia here real quick, Charlie. 8-7. They were 3-5 at the beginning of the year also. Jalen Hurts turned it around a little bit, and somebody got to that defense because they played a lot better these last 4 weeks.
Yeah, they really have, and it's been defense that's really helped, but also the offense has turned it around. They're plus 80 now on their differential, so they've shut teams down and they've started scoring. Gosh, what a scenario to start winning with. Okay, thank you very much. And so now they've won 3 in a row, and you put yourself in the playoff picture. So that's and again, Philly fans now are all of a sudden happy.
No doubt about it.
The jail inside the stadium has stayed empty because everybody wants to stay in the stands.
Right, exactly. No, 8-7. I mean, that turned it around very well. And if it wasn't for the early season loss to the 49ers, I believe they would have a better tiebreaker than the 49ers if it hadn't.
Actually, I think they win the tiebreaker with the 49ers. I forget what the scenario is there, but
conference record. They have a better conference record.
Yeah, that's it. So they do have the tiebreaker with the 49ers.
Well, they don't because they lost head-to-head to them. That's the number one tiebreaker. 49ers beat them early in the year.
We'll have to check that. I think that's wrong. I was surprised about the way the tiebreaker thing works, but I think they have the lead.
I'm pretty sure San Francisco beat Philadelphia 17-11 in week 3.
They did, and I thought that was the key. But somehow, when the tiebreakers work out,
I know what you mean. If it ends up in multiple teams, then you've got a
Yes.
different tiebreaker. Okay.
Yes.
If we're talking about San Francisco and Philly only, San Francisco has a tiebreaker over Philly. Yeah, if they end up,
Exactly.
if all these 4 teams end up at 8-8, then we've got a whole,
Yeah.
ragamaroo that.
Yeah. They draw ping pong balls out of a
Yeah,
hat.
yeah. We don't even have enough show to even go through one of those scenarios right now. All right, move on to the NFC North. We talked about Green Bay, the 1 seed. They're at 12-3, 1 game ahead of the Cowboys, and 1 game ahead of the Rams as well too. They beat the Rams, so they'll have that tiebreaker on them. They didn't play Dallas this year. Dallas the 9-1 conference record. Green Bay the 8-2. So they've got 2 conference games left. The Cowboys only have the 1 conference game left, and then the Rams have played 11 conference games, so they've only got 1 more conference game left, and that's the 49ers in 2 weeks, I believe. And then Tampa Bay 7-4. They've got 1 more conference game left as well. They're playing the Jets this weekend, so we know that. But 11-4, 11-4, 11-4, 12-3. Green Bay, we know Green Bay's got Minnesota. Minnesota needs the game. It's a huge game for Minnesota right now, but it's kind of a big game for Green Bay. They don't want to lose that 1 seed.
Yeah, no. I mean, it is a big game, and everybody's saying that Aaron Rodgers, shut up and stop talking about, well, yeah, I'd like to be here, and maybe I'd like to be there, and everything. Shut up and talk about winning the game. You know, has he become the most boring bore in all of
I wouldn't
football?
say boring. It's not boring. He's talking a lot. But anyway, the point being that the Dallas Cowboys have a shot at this 1 seed if Green Bay trips up. If Minnesota trips them
Yeah.
up, Green Bay with the Dallas has the 1 game against
But
the
do you really think
Eagles.
Minnesota's playing that well? Do you think
No,
Minnesota's playing that well
no,
to
but they
beat
did beat them early in the year, and they do kind of have the secret on
Yeah, but
Rodgers.
they were playing better in the earlier in the year. I don't like where Minnesota is right now. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. But the fact that they're 7-8 still gives them a shot because the 49ers are 8-7 and the
Oh yeah,
Eagles
no,
are 8 and
it's
7.
not a walkover game. Don't
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. It's not a go in there and they'll it be done by halftime game. But I don't like where Minnesota is right now.
Right. No, I get you. I get you. 8-7 for San Francisco, 8-7 for Philly, 7-8 for Minnesota, 7-8 for Atlanta, and 7-8 for New Orleans. So that's 6-10. That's 5 teams that are all within a game of each other. Tiebreakers aside, these games all mean something to everybody from that standpoint. All right, we roll on to the NFC South. We don't need to spend a lot of time here. The Bucks are in the 4 seed. They can overtake the Rams if the Rams lose a game and Tampa Bay wins both games outright. Looks like they will. The Dallas Cowboys, they lost to Tampa Bay early in the year. So if they end up tied, Tampa Bay will end up getting the tiebreaker on them that Thursday night game to open the year. They got the game-winning field goal. So again, another scenario if all 4 teams or 3 teams end up with the same record, then they use a different scenario for that. But if they all play each other, then that's the first round robin head to head, and then after that, it goes into conference records and all this other stuff that we'll just wait till the playoffs come and they'll tell us where they'll play and we'll be all ready to go. And we'll
No,
have
we'll keep talking about these scenarios because it's too fun.
All right, so Tampa Bay, pretty much the NFC South, they're set up. They probably will win 2 games this week, whether they cover or not. We'll get to that on Sunday with our social media selections on Sunday morning, West Coast time. The NFC West, talked about Arizona. They lost Saturday night to that red-hot Colts team. They've lost 4 of their last 5. They're in 5th overall, 2nd in the division. They whooped up on the Rams the first time. They lost to them the second time on the Monday night 2 Mondays ago. Their division record is better than the Rams. They're 4-1 versus 3-2. Conference-wise, the Rams are 8-3. And the Cardinals are 6-4. So they pretty much have to win outright, and they have to finish them over the Rams by a game. They can't end up tied because the conference record will come back and bite them. I think they're 6-4, so they've got 2 left. The Rams have 1 conference game. I guess theoretically they both can end up 8-4, and then it goes further from there. Strength of schedule. Arizona has a better strength of schedule record, so maybe that's where it goes next from there. But Arizona, huge game against Dallas. Can they snap up and get Dallas with Kyler Murray and that offense? Because the defense hasn't stopped anybody yet.
No,
Right.
I don't think so. I especially because I think Dallas is coming off a tremendous high after this game last Sunday night, and I think they're just going to come in and be ready. And I don't like where Arizona is right now. I think they will be. I think they're going to play like a desperate football team.
Yeah.
And when you play desperate, that's when you make mistakes. And I think they're playing desperate. Although here's the one little, you always look for those little tweaks
Yeah.
when you're trying to wager. They're 3-4 at home, but they're 7-1 on the
Right.
road. Okay.
7-1 on the road. They're only lost to the Lions 2 weeks ago. All their wins on the road have been by double digits. So there you go. That's one to look at as well too. If their defense comes out and plays a little bit, maybe shuts Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott down. Dak Prescott has not been great. Their secondary has been pretty good this year. I mean, I can see them if that thing gets up above 6. Maybe take Arizona in the points and hope for overtime because you can't lose by more than 6 in overtime. So that's kind of the way I look at it when it comes to scenarios like that, because these are two teams that were leading their division for most of the year until the Rams overtook them the last couple of years. So very interesting games this weekend.
By the way,
NFL.
Dallas 5-2 at home.
Dallas is 5-2 at home as well too. Yeah, so they got beat up by Denver. One of those games was that Denver game, and I forgot who they lost to at home before that. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. So a big NFL playoff weekend, a big NFL scenario weekend, 2 more weekends left in the NFL for the 17-game season. 7 teams make the playoffs in each conference. We'll have it here every day on social media and on the Make the Money and Run podcast as we go into year 3 starting next week for the Make the Money and Run podcast. How about that? And figure where we were. We started with COVID, and now we've got a total scenario of the NFL. All right, that'll do it for the NFL. Let's move on to college football. The big games tomorrow. We've watched the bowl games. Some of us have put money on the bowl games, but the college football championship, the semifinals take place tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern for the Cotton Bowl. Alabama, 13.5-point favorite versus Cincinnati. The total 57.5. Desmond Ridder at quarterback for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner for Alabama. They ripped up Georgia in what was really a shocking SEC championship game. Not that they couldn't win it, but how much they destroyed Georgia in that game. They kept dropped Georgia from 1 to 3, and in the Orange Bowl later that night, 8 o'clock Eastern, actually 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 on the West. Georgia, a 7.5-point favorite. That's come down a point from the opening line to Michigan, 5.5. And January 10th, Lucas Field in Indianapolis will be where the BCS championship goes, the 2 winners a week from Monday. Charlie, we waited season for this. Here we are. Alabama, Cincinnati, 13.5, and Georgia, 7.5 over Michigan. What say you?
Well, I was looking, and the largest spreads in these playoff games, the 4 largest spreads have been 19.5, 15, 13, and 12.5. Alabama was involved in 3 of those, and they covered in 1 in 3 of those. The other one, LSU was involved in against Oklahoma, and they covered. So Vegas has been pretty right on all of those. And as much as I like the Bearcats, and as excited as I am about a non-power 5 being in there, this is the first time that the number 4 seed has been an undefeated team.
Right.
It's always been, the number 4 team has always been a team that's had 1 loss. And again, there's a reason for that. They're going in against a team that, folks, we always laugh about it, and we always say this, but if there was relegation in the NFL,
Someone would pick up Alabama and drop
somebody would pick up Alabama. I don't know that that's totally true, but
no.
Saban and this team are amazing, and I don't like Alabama. Casey, sorry, but that's true. I'm not surprising you. I get bored with Alabama, but they're there every year for one reason, and that's because they're great. Yeah. It's a great football program. It's a great team. He's a great coach.
Right.
And I like Luke Fickell. I think Cincinnati's a great story. And I wish them well. And I would love to be able to tell you, I think uh, that things are going to be different.
All right.
Uh, I don't think I'm going to wager on this game, but if I was, I would take Alabama and I would give those points away
I might
because
take the over in that game. I might take the over in that game. We'll have it
you
out
know
there.
what? Because you know what? I think the over under, and I think the over under in that is too low.
All right,
Yes.
let me ask you this then, because we watched all these teams, we watched all the college games this year, a lot of it for our show and a lot of it for our personal enjoyment. What number would Alabama be for you to even think about taking Cincinnati? 16, 17?
Probably 19.
Okay. So a little less than 3 touchdowns. All right.
Yeah.
I give Desmond Ritter a little more credit than that. I think there's a few people out there, I've heard some so-called experts like us that have said that Cincinnati can play with Alabama. And I think they can if they can protect Desmond Ritter and they can run the ball a little bit. Alabama's defense has been susceptible. There are holes in Alabama's defense this year. Auburn nearly got them. I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about Alabama right now if the Iron Bowl had gone the way it should have ended and Auburn didn't choke it at the end to let Alabama come back and get that game. I mean, give Alabama credit, but boy, Auburn had that lead the whole game, and they were right there for the taking to knock Alabama out of any chance of being in the BCS right now. All right, Georgia, Michigan. What do you think about Georgia, Michigan here, Charlie?
Well, I think unfortunately for Michigan, uh, Georgia's going to be really, really pumped up
Yep.
because they want a second bite at the apple,
Yeah.
and that's going to make them dangerous. And I'm a little concerned that psychologically, Michigan may have left it all on the field after they beat Ohio State, because that Ohio State game to Michigan and their fans and to Harbaugh may have been bigger than this semifinal game. And I'm really serious about that. Because that was the game they needed to prove to themselves that they really all belonged in the Big Ten and could do what they really thought they could do, and that program was back. So I think this game is not that this game isn't important to them, but it's not as important as that game was. So
Right.
I think they'll play. I think it'll be competitive, but if they lose, Harbaugh's not getting fired, and they're not. People are not going to be uh, tearing their clothes and sitting in ash heaps in Ann Arbor. I mean, they just aren't.
Very interesting scenario how it goes tomorrow. We'll have our social media selections before 3 o'clock tomorrow for these games, as well as all the other NBA and NCAA college games, any hockey games. We'll have them all for you. 3 o'clock, we'll have one post tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock, so you can get in on these games before maybe 11:30. I don't know, 11:30 West Coast time. We'll have something going on. We've got early morning games, we've got late afternoon games, we've got everything going on as well too. All right, the last thing that we have here, we cannot let football go by without talking about John Madden. 2 days ago, John Madden passes away at 85. The Oakland Raiders coach for 10 years, longtime broadcasters, we know, CBS, Fox, NBC, ABC, total icon, the video games. I mean, I can't think of, and I was thinking about this the other day when I saw the news, and I know he'd been in ill health. I heard it on local radio. A couple of guys that know him know that he'd been in ill health, and he ran the bocce ball tournament down here in Los Gatos for a lot of years here and in Livermore too. Steve Mariucci has taken that over as well too. I was lucky to be at one or two of them. So I had not been around him very much, even in the 90s when I first started my broadcasting jobs. But I was around him about 3 or 4 times. For those of you that don't know the area of Pleasanton, California, that's where he lived. Downtown Pleasanton, there was a place called the Pleasanton Hotel, probably of ill repute back in the early 1900s. But the hotel itself was turned into office buildings, and downstairs was a bar slash music venue for bands and things to come. I spent the New Year's Eve there one year uh, with a friend of mine, and we watched a band and we danced and all that. Anyway, the bottom line is he owned that building, and on any particular day, you could see him in there having a cocktail with whomever his friends were, or his cronies were at that time. And I remember walking in one time and sitting down with him for about 20 minutes and having a conversation with him about it. And having grown up in the Bay Area, or having been in the Bay Area since high school, obviously you knew who John Madden was. He wasn't coaching when we moved here, but I certainly remember him being on the broadcasting team. All the things that he did. Then the video game comes out. He is the only guy, Charlie, in all of sports, and I mean this in all sports, and I know it's a very big window here that I'm going with here. He's the only guy in all sports that has affected 6 generations of people knowing who he is without them knowing what his early iterations were, to the people that have grown up watching him coach and play. Because when you talk about Madden now, if you talk to a 10-year-old now about Madden, it's the video game and video game only. It's not, they might not even know he's a broadcaster, let alone he was a coach for that matter, unlike you and I at a certain age. So you're talking about 4 different generations. The game has exploded. The tournaments that go all over the country, the early commercials, the getting out of the trains, and the whole thing about not being able to fly and all this other stuff. I'm rambling here a little bit, but it's somebody that we've all known for 40 plus years in my life as far as that goes. So you might have heard of him a little longer. You probably watched him coach a little bit more. So give me your thoughts on John Madden here.
Well, it's funny you should mention kids knowing him only from the game. I have a 13-year-old grandson who said to me, Grandpa, I had no idea that he was a coach.
Yeah.
And that he was on TV, because he plays Madden with his brothers. And he said, I didn't know who he was. And I said, yeah. I said, he was awesome. And then I had to tell him that I was old enough that I watched him coach.
Yeah.
That back then I wasn't as angry with the Raiders as I am now. And that I actually was a season ticket holder when he was a coach. And I used to watch him stomp up and down the sidelines. And, yeah, iconic. I mean, at the time,
that kind of impact on the league as an advisor to the commissioner, the game, Electronic Arts, EA Sports in Redwood City right here, Bay Area. I used to drive by it all the time. The game, the iteration of the game itself with his input, and he's right up there. He's very well in tune with the youth of today, going into not only the game but just in general conversation with
it. And he was the youngest coach at that time ever hired in the NFL. 32 years old. I'd forgotten about that. He was 32 when he was hired.
Yeah.
By Al Davis, and then at 42 retires.
Yeah.
And they were talking about why he did retire at that point, and they were saying, at that time, you didn't have the kind of staff that you have now in the NFL, and he was burned out. Because those guys were having to do everything. So he was burned out, and then he turns around and finds broadcasting, and he literally changes the face of broadcasting football. Because what's he do? He comes in and he's John Madden.
Yeah.
And he's John Madden, and everybody loves John because he comes in and he explains football for the person who knows nothing about football, but he doesn't insult the person who knows everything about football.
Right.
And he makes it fun. The most important thing that I ever learned from John Madden, and it was early on in his broadcasting career, was he said, look, you got to understand, here's how you win football. There's 3 phases: offense, defense, and special teams. You've got to win 2 phases of the game to win. So when you watch the game, you either have to win offense, defense, or you have to win offense, special teams, defense, special teams, and you can win the game.
Right.
Every game, that's how I watch, and that's how I know who's going to win. He changed everything about the way I watch a game, and that was like his first or second year as a broadcaster.
Right. Also, he said, if this team doesn't score, they're not going to win.
Yep. And I heard somebody say yesterday, every time Tony Romo cashes a check, he needs to
Yeah,
thank John
sure.
Madden because he changed the role of an analyst
No doubt
and the
about it.
importance of an analyst. Not that Tony Romo's not talented and isn't cutting a new edge himself, but yeah, and a great guy, was always approachable. Al Michaels yesterday, I saw him interviewed, and he said, one of the things that made Madden so unique as well was the fact that he didn't fly, the
Yeah.
fact that he was in the bus, and that when he was in the bus, he'd stop. And when he would stop at little cafes and little truck stops and stuff. And then when he'd get off, he just love on people,
Yeah.
and was so approachable and everything else. And he became America's guy.
Did you ever
Uh,
meet him?
you know what? I did not,
Mm.
which is pretty amazing. And all of the things that I've done, it was like I was always just missing him.
Yeah.
And so I only knew him from afar. And a ton of people that I know him, but I never made that connection.
Yeah. Same
So
with me. I only been around him a couple times. I remember he was in the mid 90s. He was at a Stanford game. He had the bus there. He had the Madden Cruiser there and everything like that. And so I got a chance to see inside the Cruiser the one time, but I've been around him a couple times early in the Fox days, so mid to late 90s when I joined them. And then a little bit after that, like I said, the Pleasanton Hotel and downtown Pleasanton. And obviously he was go to Raiders games after he retired from broadcasting. They had a suite set up for him and all that. And my friend Greg Papa that did the Raiders games then would always see him at that point too. In fact, the commissioner had set up all the I don't know what they call those TVs, but one of those TVs that you see at like Nordstrom's or Valley Fair where you get the 12 screens that turn into one screen.
oh yeah, yeah.
So anyway, he would have all the football games available there. And I remember Greg telling me one time, or telling the audience one time on his radio show, that they would go over there on March Madness and they would just sit there all day with him and his sons and watch March Madness basketball there. He was a fan of all sports, by the way, too. He was a big
Yes.
baseball fan. He had local radio shows. He used to do local hits on local radio here at KCBS and
Yeah.
KNBR, KGO every once in a while too. But yeah, he would always have an opinion on what's going on, and he knew what was going on. And by the way, as fun and as bombastic and as the way he sounded on the air, he's nobody's fool, by the way.
No. No, he
He's
was smart
nobody's
man.
fool. You don't get to be in that position with the game and the way you taught football and the way you learned football and with the people that you knew, without having some knowledge and some good business sense on that. And either he's got the greatest people around him, but I'm sure he had a lot to do with it himself as well too. So anyway, want to make sure we pass that on because we go into the new year. Unfortunately, we will not have John Madden around anymore. One more note I wanted to pass. This is more personal to me. The ESPN Chicago reporter Jeff Dickerson, who passed away, 44 years old the other day. Very sad. Colon cancer took him. He had been the Bears reporter for 20 years. Good guy, JD. A lot of people at ESPN, our friend Mike Triplett knows him well. They're all colleagues at ESPN with their teams and all that. 2 years ago, his wife passed away from melanoma. And so they've got an 11-year-old son. And so they're trying to set up a GoFundMe account for that type of stuff. But JD was a good guy. He'll be missed. Obviously not an icon like, no offense, not an icon like John Madden, but definitely 44, way too young. You expect it at 85. You don't expect it at 44. I mean, look at us. We've done things to ourselves. We're surprised where we are every once in a while, right?
Every day.
Every day. All right. Well, JD, you'll be missed. Jeff Dickerson. Of course, John Madden passed away at 85. All right. That's going to do it for us. Happy New Year, everybody. Enjoy the college football semifinals. We're going to go into year 3. So our second anniversary show will be Monday. I'll be there. I don't know if Charlie will be there or not, but hopefully we'll have an anniversary show. Intern Nick will try and get some guests on.
Monday, I will be there.
Charlie will be here on Monday. I don't know what Casey's situation is. We'll try and get some guests on and kind of celebrate going into year 3. The first year that we started, we went into COVID. The second year we started, we were still figuring things out. And the third year, we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going into it anyway. So here we go. All right, Charlie, it's been a fun 2 years. Happy New Year to you and your family.
Same to you.
We'll talk to you soon. And enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the college football, the NFL playoffs. Huge. The Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola and Cupertino, We look forward to futuring our relationship with them as well. Super Draft Pro as well, too. SuperDraftPro.com/V Party Sports. Again, have a great New Year's Eve. Have a happy New Year. We'll see you on Monday with the anniversary show. Charlie O, Vasivada Party, intern Nick on assignment. We will see you Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern. Don't forget our social media selections every day at 6 o'clock. Have a great New Year's. Talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.